Hi there, everybody. Sophie Aldred here, aka Ace from Doctor Who, and you are listening to the Sirens of Audio podcast.
Okay, you ready?
No.
What a... There you go. What a fascinating chat. Let me start again. There's a good blooper anyway. We'll put that on somewhere. G'day, audiophiles. This is the Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who in the audio medium. My name's Dwayne.
And my name is Philip. G'day, Dwayne. G'day, audiophiles.
I'm very, very excited today, Philip. We're going to be speaking with one of the composers for Big Finish later in the show. Well, not too far into the show, actually. Rob Harvey is joining us. Yes,
well, I've been enjoying Rob's music. I think I was mentioned to you just recently. I was listening to one of his scores, getting to an old story. It's been out for a few months, but I hadn't got to. And you know me, I don't look at the cast lists, I don't look at anything. But the music track came up, and I actually listened to the whole music track and thought, boy, I enjoyed that. And then I played it again, which I don't think I've ever done before. And then once I finished the story, I thought I better find out who this was, because I really enjoyed it. And it was Rob Harvey. I went, oh, that's a great blessing that was, because we're going to talk to him today. So I'm very excited to speak to him.
Yes, that's coming up very soon. But you know what, Philip?
Yeah, what's going to happen first, Dwayne?
Before we talk to Rob, we have to jump into that rabbit hole. Let's go. Okay, Philip, so because we're on a sort of a sound design, music theme for our episode, I wanted to talk to you about a movie that I recently saw. Well, two movies, really, and I'm not sure if you saw them. You were saying to me that you weren't going to be able to get to the cinema to see the Dalek movies, the Peter Cushing films, but I got to see them in Hobart when I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and I was totally I wasn't planning on going, but I just happened to be in Hobart where they were screening it. If they were screening it up here where I am, near Launceston, I definitely would have made plans to go. But it just so happened I was in Hobart, so I thought, well, I'm here, I may as well go. And I'm so glad I did. And the reason for that is because of the sound. The sound has been enhanced by Mark Ayres, of course. Good old faithful Mark Ayres has been doing it for decades now. And it was thrilling, not only to be able to see it on the big screen, but to be able to hear the sound of these movies better than I'd ever heard them before. So there's the question, Philip. Did you get to see them?
Well, I am insanely jealous because unfortunately, no. I was away on holidays. I was up at Port Stephens with my family, enjoying the rain. Yes. For those of you who aren't in Australia, well, the East Coast, I think you've been okay in Tasmania. We have just had incessant rain for 7 months now. It's just basically raining the whole time. So good to get away in the rain for a holiday on the beach in the rain. But never mind, it was a good time anyway. So yes, unfortunately, I missed the production. I was really sad about that because I those two movies I adore. Certainly there was my fairly standard thing that I saw regularly, because in Australian TV they were shown basically every 6 months. And so every 6 months on a Sunday afternoon, they'd appear as part of just the normal programming. And they were the first Doctor Who I ever recorded on a tape deck. I got out my audio tape deck and recorded it off the TV in my bedroom. So I had the audio for those two movies. And I would have seen the movies long before I saw the TV shows, before the original black and whites. So to me, they were very much part of Doctor Who, the original. And yeah, to me, Peter Cushing has always been one of the Doctors.
It's funny you say that, your recollections of seeing it on television. I don't remember ever seeing it on TV. But back in the day, in the 80s, when going to the video shop was all the rage, remember you had two sections. You had VHS and Beta. Well, my parents' for some reason, decided to go beta, which meant the selection was less. And I used to go and drool over this VHS copy of Daleks Invasion Earth 2150. And I never got to see that ever. So I can't remember when the first time was that I saw them. No, I simply cannot remember. I don't think it's that long ago. Maybe only in the last 20 years have I seen the movies. Maybe 25 years. I don't know.
Well,
but,
actually, it would be interesting. One of just another little story sideline on that. My cousin Christopher Thompson, who we've actually had on the program, who's done now working for different comic people over in the UK. I remember watching Invasion 2150 at his house. We'd gone over to my aunt's house for lunch. I forget what we were doing, and he came and watched it with me, and that was his first Doctor Who. And that's so. I mean, I would have been, I don't know, 10 or 11. He would have been 5 or 6, and that was his first Doctor Who, and that was his introduction to the cultness and stupidity that is Doctor Who fans and all that it does to us. So yeah, so that film is actually what we connected with as cousins, and both of us, I guess, our fandom and our love of Doctor Who was because of Sunday afternoon watching that film together.
Yeah, and it's amazing the enhancements, all these re-releases, because I think it's Ultra HD and the audio has been enhanced. I wonder what technology is going to enable us to do in the future. Are we going to be able to get inside the movie and feel like we're... I mean, that's how they trailed the Daleks, isn't it? You can feel their fire and feel that you're there. Maybe one day technology will let us get inside the film itself. Who knows?
So it was good. So I did actually. So you really enjoyed it?
I did, and particularly the sound side of things. Well, I saw Mark Ayre's name at the start there, because I think they had an announcement that this is an enhanced, a remastered version, and had a few names on it. Mark's name jumped out at me, so yeah, I was really paying attention to all those little sounds that you don't usually get when you're listening on your television. Because even though I have a sound bar at home, I don't often turn the sound bar on. I should turn it on more. But although one experience that I did really enjoy is, you remember how this is totally different to the Doctor Who movies, but do you remember when Knock Knock, that episode came out? And it came out with and some kind of aural enhancement. So it was like it was in quad, I think, in your headphones. So I listened to that in headphones, and that was really, really cool. Did you do that? Knock Knock?
No, I didn't do it, but I knew that you could do it.
And it's probably got the enhancement on the DVD. You can switch it on if you want to, with all the knocks coming all around you if you've got your headphones on. Very, very cool. So so thinking about scores and music, of course, the Doctor Who Dalek films are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Philip, help me.
Orchestral. Are you after the music?
They are orchestral, but they're very unique to the Dalek movies. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Oh, particularly the second one. That always reminds that sort of theme always reminds me of Bernard Cribbins walking around in his Robo-Man outfit through the Dalek saucer.
Yes, and I'm not sure the music always matches the tone of what's going on screen, but it's fantastic music anyway.
Yeah, the second film, it has a lot of dramatic music in it, but there's also a lot of comedy as well. So it really blends comedy and action, unlike the TV series ever did. And yeah, it's a really interesting experience to see them in the cinema.
It's very Avengerish in terms of the costumes and the colour and
yes,
it's just so. I mean, I'd love to see on the big screen because I assume the colour is just overwhelming because of the bright reds, the yellows, because everything is just vibrant colour in it.
Yeah, particularly that first film. The second one being more Earth-based, it probably wasn't as vibrant as the Skaro-based one. And yeah, I always seem to prefer the second one over the first one. I find myself getting a little bored, I think, by the time it gets towards the end. I don't know why, because it's a lot shorter than the TV episodes, but I always prefer the Daleks on TV.
Yeah, so do I actually. I think the characterizations on the TV show work better than the movie. But yeah, But I think I probably.
And it's got Tristram Carey's music, which is always a winner for me.
Yes,
that's what tips the scales for me in terms of Dalek Invasion of Earth and the Daleks on TV. It's always the score that always tips me over the edge.
Yeah,
because I don't like the score on Daleks Invasion of Earth anyway. All right, so I just thought I'd raise that because we're on a musical and sound design sort of theme for this episode. So let's jump out of the rabbit hole. We'll throw in a trailer for something that Rob... let's throw in a trailer for The Lone Centurion, eh? So The Lone Centurion was... box set 2 was released a couple of months ago, so I'll throw in a trailer for that. Rob worked on that, not only the sound and music, but the theme, and we'll be back with him in just a moment.
Who goes there?
'Tis I, friend, Sir Lancelot, covered in glory, and treasure.
Open the gate!
From Big Finish Productions, The Lone Centurion, Volume 2.
Hold the poultice on the wound. It will help combat the infection.
There are other options we could try.
Boy, while I admire the confidence in your medical knowledge, the fact that you believe it surpasses my own is beginning to grate.
Word has reached me that a dangerous artifact has been smuggled into Camelot.
What kind of object?
An arcane weapon that is supposed to contain the power of a divine trickster. But advise the guards to be cautious. The box has a guardian.
Some kind of magical defender?
You are the Centurion that guards the Pandorica.
How many times? No, I'm not.
And now you must decide. Which one will you pull to safety? And which one will be breathed upon by the evil dragon?
I thought Camelot was meant to be at peace as long as Arthur was king. And yet, it appears Camelot is now at war.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Right, well, I better get going. Camelot needs me.
One of the most important components for audio is the sound design and music, and we have one of the sound designers and musicians from Big Finish with us today, Rob Harvey. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very well. You were just telling us a moment ago that you're keeping yourself very busy at the moment with lots of audio work. I guess during the last couple of years, audio is a medium that more and more people are turning to.
Yeah, absolutely. With lockdown and working from home, I was in a really fortunate position to be able to sort of keep busy right through the last few years, thanks to audio drama. It's kind of a machine that hasn't stopped, and it isn't looking like it's going to stop anytime soon, honestly. I really feel like audio dramas, particularly over the last few years, has really gotten into the public eye and has become a bit more mainstream even. It's got a bit more of a validity than it had prior to this. I'm working on a lot of interesting stuff at the moment. I work quite a lot with Scott Hancock, and currently we're working on a War Master box set, the one coming out in December.
Escape from Reality.
Escape from Reality. Yeah, and we're also working on a Dorian short film, which is coming out in October. And I've also got my first Dorian vinyl release, in fact, my first vinyl release ever, actually, which is really exciting, coming out around the same time. So yeah, that's all very exciting and a lot of interesting, development in my music, and I'm very, very, very pleased with how things are going.
Well, I want to talk to you about the vinyl. My ears have pricked up with that because there is a difference, I think, in sound on vinyl as opposed to digital. So I want to talk to you about that. But before we do, I want to go back a little bit and get to know you a little bit. So a lot of people who work for Big Finish are Doctor Who fans. Are you one of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think Doctor Who for me really first came into my life when Eccleston came onto the telly. When I was young growing up, there was no Doctor Who around. I was a kind of a Star Wars fan mainly, but Thunderbirds as well, like things like all the Jerry Anderson stuff. But but no, Doctor Who really came into my life with Eccleston, and carried on through things like Torchwood and Tennant's era and Doctor Who. It brings this intense nostalgia for me when I see that period in Doctor Who, which for me was one of my favourites. And having worked in a bunch of different eras of Doctor Who, it's still my favourite.
So after discovering the new series, you make us feel so old. Thank you for that.
Sorry about that.
Have you gone back to into the classic series, or are you still? Have you covered that whole era now of the classic series, or have you still got gaps in there that you need to catch up on?
Definitely some gaps. I need to go back and watch Sylvester McCoy properly. That's an era I really like as well. But no, I watched a lot of Peter Davison as well, because obviously I've worked on Fifth Doctor stories for Big Finish, and I've watched quite a lot of Colin Baker, and I've watched quite a lot of Tom Baker. But yeah, no, it's a completely different land really to what's happening today in modern Doctor Who, in my opinion, particularly with the music, and that's really where I'm listening. Old Doctor Who is essentially lots of stabs and synth, and they're really kind of treading ground that's never been trodden before back then, and it's really interesting to go back and just look at Doctor Who in its sort of embryonic state before it really becomes what we know of today. So I mean, I've watched a lot of. I remember before the Mark arc, we did a series of stories with a new character, a new companion called Mark. When I had to do my research for that series, I watched Earthshock. I watched a lot of Earthshock, and I took a lot of my inspiration from that, particularly with this. When it came to the Sideman themes, there's a lot of the rhythmic, the kind of rhythmic footprint of that for me kind of worked its way into things like Warzone and Conversion, and then Thin Time and the Mad Quake a little later on, and then which ended with a really amazing box set,
Lost Resort.
Yeah, I absolutely love that box set. When I first listened to it, it took me a few listens to really kind of understand it, but it particularly sort of caught my eye as a point where Adric's sort of his journey through the Whoniverse kind of comes to an end,
and he gets a proper goodbye in that story. So
a heroic goodbye as well.
Yeah,
exactly. I think he really deserved it.
Yeah.
Particularly, essentially he's sacrificing himself in there, isn't it?
Yep.
It makes his entire arc, particularly from before, seem like it's heroic, and it really makes you feel something for his character. Matthew Waterhouse absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did you have music? I can't remember, but did you have music going over that dialogue between the Doctor and Adric right at the end? Was there a little bit of music going underneath that? So I've got you to thank for making me cry as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it made me cry as well. I'm not gonna lie. Just hearing it, yeah. But there's that moment when Adric's voice catches, and I just thought, oh, I've got to do that. Then it's out come the strings, and as all of the characters there sort of fade away. Real tearjerker, that one. It broke me totally.
Do you get emotional as you put it together? Because I mean, you've got a lot of things you have to do. Like you're gathering all these different bits of dialogue, you're pasting them together, you're pacing them a bit in terms of you have a bit of control over the pacing of how the characters speak and where the pauses are. Do you actually? How emotional do you get when you listen to it for the first time?
You do get very, very entrenched in it, and often my job is really to tease out those emotions. So I often have to really listen a few times before I really understand the scene, and that was a very. I'm working on one right now actually, which is just totally kicking me, and I will get it, and it will be done by the end of the week. But no, that Adric scene, it took me a few goes, obviously, because it was an important scene.
Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, I do get very tied up in this, in Doctor Who, emotionally. And I have to really follow what's going on, and I have to feel what's going on in order to really put it on the page. Honestly, I'm sort of disassociation and stuff for me just doesn't work. Like I have to actually get involved with the action, and I have to really imagine it. I have to understand it in order to kind of push the cue in the right direction, because cues can go in any direction really, and there's one that's right, if you understand. So you have to kind of be able to empathize with what's going on and understand in order to do the job properly, essentially. But I'm fairly certain other composers would probably disagree with me on that, but I do get very, very, tied into the characters, because the characters are just so amazing. And you kind of develop a real kinship with them, and you feel kind of, quite deeply when something goes wrong. And yeah.
I'm curious to know, how did you get into music in the first place?
Yeah, so it's kind of the only thing I've ever been good at. At school, I flunked all my exams at school, but I was always doing music all the time. It's the only thing I've really ever been passionate about. And I remember, having the meeting after sort of school finished, after sixth form, with the head of year saying, school hasn't really worked for you, has it? So right, no problem. Well, what are you passionate about? Well, music. So I went off to study music for 6 or so years. Part of it was only a further education college near where I live. However, they had this degree course, so I ended up just sticking around there for 6 years, and it was really it was a real sort of journey through music, and the context of it. I have a lot to thank those people for, because they gave a real breadth of knowledge, and something I kind of want to get across is I sort of feel like music is, understanding someone's music, to me, really feels like you sort of understand their culture a bit more. And I think definitely, the kind of contextual side of music is very important. It's something I really want to bring forward in my work all the time. I'm always thinking about it. So they gave me a really good background there. But, music sort of started off for me listening to classic rock. I loved classic rock when I was a kid, like very young.
Give me some of your favourites, because I'm a classic rock fan. Philip will have to rein us in, because I can talk a lot about that.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I used to really love Judas Priest when I was a kid. Queen, Metallica, sort of Led Zeppelin, Lynyrd Skynyrd. Well, not so much Lynyrd Skynyrd. They're a bit too sort of South American for me, to be honest. And then,
as in Deep South.
Yeah. And I used to listen to Kerrang. My dad had loads of Kerrang magazines and all that, and a few albums. And I used to just listen to those over and over again as a kid. And then also prog rock. I'm a huge prog fan. I love Rush.
Now you've done it.
I had a feeling about you guys. No, yeah, I could always tell prog fan when I see one. But no, yeah, Genesis, Rush, King Crimson. Yes, huge fan of those. For me, their kind of storybook approach to music was really something that resonated with my younger self, definitely, and still does, to be honest. Huge fan of Essex Stage Left, the Rush album, and Genesis. Selling England by the Pound was one of the first albums I heard when I was a kid. Absolutely love the kind of English approach to prog music, because obviously it came from England, it came from this country, didn't it?
I think it's a tragedy that when you say Genesis, most people think of the 80s, when to me that's not really Genesis at all.
No, it's not, is it? Yeah, Peter Gabriel is absolutely a legend as far as I'm concerned. I love his work. Absolutely love his work. Yeah.
So what do you play?
I play everything.
Well.
Yeah, sorry. I play everything. I've got... I started off playing the guitar, so as you would. I play lots of different instruments now. My main instrument now is really the piano. But to give you a kind of rough idea, I started off playing rock bands on the guitar. Then I moved to bass, and I played lots of different stuff on the bass, including like funk and Motown. But I actually ended up playing swing band music on the upright bass.
Double bass, yep.
Double bass, yeah. But I try and just pick up an instrument and give it a shot. So I'm also a brass player. I play the trombone and also play like cornet, a bit of obviously trumpet as well, because they're basically the same instrument. But at the moment, I'm actually getting into things like flutes and woodwind. So I'm particularly sort of Irish jigs on the penny whistle and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and lower range flutes, and I think I also play the violin badly. So
Everybody plays the violin badly. That's fine.
yeah. But it's whenever anyone asks me what instrument I play the piano, guitar, bass, flutes, and the violin badly. Basically, is the answer to that question.
And you sing?
No, I can. I can sing backing vocals. I don't think I've really got the kind of voice that you want to front a band with, or really lead anything. It's kind of, the wrong sort of, a singer. You think singing has to have quite a high register. I just don't have that high register, so I try and steer clear of that stuff.
So once you finished studying music, you continued playing in bands and things like that. Is that right?
Yeah. So I played in something like 100 bands, something ridiculous like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's just sometime. So if I sort of start from the beginning, it was first thing I played in was this kind of Latin art rock sort of band where I was the horn player, which was great. And then moving through, I picked up the bass. I started playing sort of prog on the bass a bit. I played in a few bands like that. I then started playing in jazz trios and things on the bass. I was quite into jazz. And then
jazz is my space.
Yeah.
Prog and jazz, that's me.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of people like Thelonious Monk and Miles Davis and John Coltrane. I really love John Coltrane's work. And the jazz has obviously turned into a very interesting. I don't know are you into sort of more old, sort of what you consider modern jazz, as in bebop and.
I do enjoy that. I mean, I used to direct jazz bands and take kids. I used to train jazz bands and things and swing bands, so that was my area. So, but I mean, all the kids like going to the modern stuff.
Yeah. Well, modern jazz now has kind of turned into sort of it's like a framework, isn't it? I mean, sort of an improvisational framework, which you can pretty well put anything to. I consider there's this one artist I really love. He's Turkish. He plays the oud. His name is Dafi Youssef. Absolutely amazing player, and he plays in this sort of jazz trio with the oud, but he also does the call to prayer over there. So he will sing as well, and it's just one of the most beautiful things you'll ever hear. And that's quite modern. It's got those electronic elements as well, which is an interesting place I think jazz has gone recently.
From leaving and playing in lots of bands, how did you end up working for Big Finish?
So while I was studying, I got in with a recording studio. One thing led to another, and I ended up working at a studio in France, down here in Tunbridge Wells, called Audio Sorcery, which is a wonderful studio. We do sort of things like kids' parties and sort of singing experiences, but they also have Big Finish as a client. In fact, that's where all Tom Baker's audios get recorded. After working there for quite a while, I eventually just started talking to Ken Bentley about music and sound and everything, and he spotted that on my website I said I was a sound designer, and he said, "So, have you thought about auditioning for Big Finish?" And I said, "I hadn't. I'll give it a go." So I did. And
so is Audio Sorcery where you learnt the techniques behind sound design?
Exactly. Yeah. Sounds. Yeah. I mean, it's the technical knowledge you get from working in a studio that help with the sound design. But the sound design is very. It's not like anything I'd ever done before, honestly. It was new for me, absolutely, when I started, and it takes a lot of figuring out and learning on the job, essentially.
Would I be right in saying that it's the most time-consuming process in creating the audios?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because you've got to do everything. So you've got to do for a script that's like 80 pages long. It'll take a day or so to do the dialogue edit. Sometimes a day and a half, depends on what editing actually needs to be done. And then you've got the soundscape edit, which is like just putting the background in. and cutting the scenes to the right length and figuring out the pace. And then you do the spot effect, which is all of the effects written in the script. So you just go through and do all of that. And then you do what I call like the finesse edit, where you put all the Foley in and just make sure everything's working properly. And that can take sort of 2.5 weeks to kind of get done per episode. Yeah, that absolutely is the most time-consuming part.
Do you mean 25-minute episode or hour episode?
So I think 80 pages is about an hour. Yeah, right. That'll be about an hour. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the average script length for Big Finish anyway. One of the nice things learning about sound design is understanding kind of the sonic landscape that you've got to work with, and it's really actually inspired certain things in my music as well.
Where does the music edit come through? Because the music then at the end. So is it 2.5 weeks for this whole sound design, and then music on top of that?
Yeah, music can take about between sort of a week and 2 weeks, depending on the score. If you're quite involved, 2 weeks is probably about right. But if there's not as much actual, if you're writing a synth score, it's definitely a lot quicker than writing an orchestral score, because orchestration takes a lot of time to get right, and you have to come up with an idea, put it on the piano, and then actually work out the idea with the orchestra. Whereas a synth score, often you're kind of using the synths as almost like a shorthand for kind of the Doctor Who universe, essentially. So like the sound of like a Yamaha CS80, that's very Blade Runner, and you can sort of understand when I play that synth, you'll immediately think, oh yeah, Blade Runner. But then certain things like modular synths, which I don't really do that much of. I've got a couple of modular synths, but that's very much more retro Who, and you kind of write music that's more of a sort of soundscape than maybe is sort of what I consider sort of music. Music to me is, melody, harmony, rhythm. Whereas I sometimes sort of feel like the sound design side of scoring, which is very pertinent, it's different, and I would say maybe a little easier. So it takes less time.
You're talking about soundscape, and got me thinking about a prog band again. You may know Porcupine Tree.
Oh, absolutely! I love Porcupine Tree.
So like Stephen Wilson's been solo for a while, but there is one ingredient in Porcupine Tree that I think of when I listen to your music, and that's Richard Barbieri's keyboards. He is not the world's greatest keyboard soloist or a Rick Wakeman or anything like that, but he has this ability to put this sort of contextual sound throughout the music that is completely him. It's completely unique, and it's his stamp. And I hear that a lot in your music too.
I absolutely adore Porcupine Tree, honestly. Yeah, particularly in albums like Fear of a Blank Planet or in Absentia. Those two albums are amazing. And Richard Barbieri's work is just fantastic as well. And Colin Edwin on bass as well. He's really a really great bass player. And obviously Gavin Harrison on drums, who might be one of the best drummers of all time.
I think he might be.
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah. Actually saw King Crimson play a few years ago. We managed to catch him. It was Gavin Harrison on drums, and there was, I can't remember who the other drummers were now, but no, just watched. I just sat there looking at Gavin Harrison.
Pat Mastelotto would have been.
Oh yeah, Pat Mastelotto was playing
the other one, and they had 3 drummers, didn't they?
Yeah, they had 3. There was that weird double trio thing they were doing with Thrak and Broom and all that. But then they made it like a 3 drummers, 2 guitar players in Robert Fripp, and who is the singer? His name was Jackie Jack. Jackie Jack, I think his name. And then I think it was Tony Levin. Yeah, it was Tony Levin on stick and bass.
Yeah,
such an amazing experience, that one. Yeah, for prog heads.
I don't think they've come to Australia. It's one of the bands I would definitely travel to, at least to the mainland, to see. But yeah, I'm not sure if they'll get to Australia. It's a big number of guys to get over.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, I mean, at the end of my studies, we actually did a King Crimson tribute band where we started. We started from like in the Court of the Crimson King and went right up through the double trio and the 3 of a perfect pair and frame by frame. We did probably the only live performance I've seen of Construction of Light that isn't King Crimson, and then we did with that's an insane piece of music. And then we did.
That's amazing how you got to straddle all those different eras, because they're totally different sounds. that you're playing with there.
Yeah, particularly the early sounds very rocky, and you have to kind of play the guitar really hard. It's, Robert. I was kind of sort of trying to channel some Robert Fripp with that band, and his playing back then hadn't really sort of changed much, but he still had to be quite rocky. But then it gets to the later stuff, which is just mind blowing. Absolutely huge fan of Robert Fripp as well. Yeah, his work with David
very,
Bowie.
very, very influential. We're on the same wavelength here, Rob. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes,
It's funny.
very much so.
Talk about prog. Yeah, something I'd like to talk about is the Lone Centurion a little bit. So when I was listening the first time through the Lone Centurion, there was something about Rory's character that just made me sort of think, well, his dad's probably a Genesis fan. You could just sort of sense it, and it just made me think, well, what works? And the kind of distorted electric bass guitar was, for me, it was very Rush. I love that sort of sound. So I tried to work it into that score, so particularly some of those prog influences, and you can hear it in the main theme particularly, which for me is quite an adventurous sort of kind of look through history, as it were, and the stories themselves. And to me, it really felt like prog when I was watching it the first time. I was listening to it the first time. It felt like storybook sort of quests. It really made me feel maybe I could inject some of that into this score, and for me it worked really well in my opinion.
No, I love that theme. I love the way it is fairy tale, it's adventurous, but when those electric guitars come in at the end, it's out of place. But then that's exactly what you want for represent the show.
The more guitars, the better, I say.
Exactly.
But I just think it just makes me smile every time those electric guitars come in, because they're just out of place, out of space. Exactly. But it works. It just fits in there so well. I was actually saying to Dwayne before, I only got to listen in the last week to the Lost Centurion, the second box set. It'd been sitting there in my feed ready to go, but I just hadn't got to it. And I was driving up to Gosford to visit my mother, and the music theme came on, the music track, and I, to be perfectly honest, often jump the music tracks just to get back to the next storyline. But it kicked off, and I just heard a little bit of a Christmas Carol in the opening of the first theme, and it intrigued me. And I thought it's just a tiny play. I think it's We Three Kings of Orientar. Just is in there, and then the next one started, which is a bit of Jerusalem. And I started listening to the music tracks and realised you've pinched little bits of Christmas carols and hymns, and that's what you've worked all your themes through in that box set. And I got to the end of the music track, went back and played it again. And then I went through, because my son was in the car and he was trying to play with his Switch and ignore me. And I made him put the Switch down, and we talked through the Christmas carols and the different things as we went. And it's just these clever little hints. It is just brilliantly done. I'm assuming it's all public domain, so you won't get sued for it. But it was just these little plays of themes, which if you know the Christmas, it was very impressive.
Yeah, it was the story itself was a kind of Christmassy story. Set in the depths of winter, wasn't it? But no, when we did the Christmas version of the main theme as well. So much fun. You get the sleigh bells out, and the choir and the organ. So great.
It's such a rip-off. I loved it.
I'm very glad to hear. Yeah, it's lovely to hear good feedback on music. Obviously it is, but seeing that you understand how in depth it was is really makes me feel really good.
I mean, the thing about good sound design you don't notice, which is but that's it. I mean, if you don't notice the sound design, I think the sound designer's done a great job. But when you can actually start analysing the music and actually start seeing, and one of the things that you do really well is use leaf motifs throughout, so that your characters do actually have little themes, and often it won't be 3 or 4 notes, I've noticed, but a character's entered the scene or is about to enter because of the notes. And one of the hardest things about audio is knowing who's in the scene at the moment, and I know the writer has to keep making sure everyone speaks every few lines, so you don't forget they're in there. But you actually do the same thing with the music. And so you actually know people are in the location because of the music. Because that's giving you the clue. And in fact, you don't need some of the characters speak as often because of the way you've done your music to actually let you know that who's in the room, who's present.
Yeah, that approach works for a lot of stuff, but particularly Lone Centurion, because it's very, very, very character driven. Lancelot in that second box was just brilliant, wasn't it?
Totally over the top, can I say? And it did take some getting used to, but in the end, I was just laughing so much. Like once I realised there's nothing serious about this character at all, he's just an absolute comedy character. I enjoyed it a lot more.
That scene in the swamp just gets me every time I listen to it, where he falls into the mud. Yeah, but no, it was funny because Lancelot's theme was just his name rhythmically. Lancelot. So whenever you heard that, you knew it was there. There's a few themes in actually Lone Centurion that kind of aren't just character themes. There's a theme whenever he's dealing with the Pandorica. Like if he's having some sort of emotional outpouring towards the Pandorica or someone who is like a female in his life, there is a theme for that. And then there's obviously there's character leitmotifs and things, which are more sort of short motifs than actual full-blown themes. I was so happy when I was offered that, because it's really the first time I've been able to really take an IP and run with it
from scratch.
From scratch. There's no working on War Master is great, but there's a really amazing theme written, and there's also a brilliant theme written from Telly as well, which is obviously the simplest, 4 Knox theme, and then you've got Yoa Morris's amazing theme as well. So working in those constraints is brilliant, but actually being able to take a new property and make it how I want to make it was just totally awesome. Because it really allowed me to really put everything of me, everything I think of as my kind of identity into it. And with Rory's character being about the same age as me, we probably would have played sort of the same video games. We probably would have read the same books and seen the same films. So actually, it was quite fitting, because a lot of my influences come from back in the 90s and into the noughties, really.
We're running a bit like a prog tune here, because you got to the part where Ken had said, have you decided to audition? Have you ever tried auditioning for Big Finish? What happened then? You approached Big Finish?
Yep. So Nick was in the studio. So I just said, can I audition? And he said, yes. He sent me the files. I did the audition, got the, waited a bit, got the go ahead. I think. So
was that a matter of just getting dialogue and putting some sound design and music to it?
Exactly. Yeah. Just have it. Can you do it? It was, they've used the same audition files for, I think they've used the same audition files for about 10 or 15 years. So yeah, it was really great hearing those and working on something for the first time, really. But once we got the part, once the kind of, I got the go ahead to start working for Big Finish, first thing I did was a short trip called, I believe it was called
Black Dog, was it?
That was it, yeah. With Louise Jameson, who's obviously wonderful and amazing. And that was I was working with Lisa on that. And then I was working with Lisa Bauman on that, which is really nice. And she gave me sort of a lot of encouragement actually early on, saying, this is great, let's change this bit and this bit. Which, looking back now, was definitely, she was really kind of protecting my kind of, how good trying not to discourage me is what I'm trying to say. She's trying not to discourage me. Yeah. And then after that, I worked on my first full-length audio dramas. I think that was Countermeasures. It was actually the new Countermeasures when the Countermeasures got let forward.
It was the special single one-off one, wasn't it? And then you went to the box set after that. It was Who Killed Toby Kinsella? Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that was a really amazing intro to sound design. And I remember feeling very sort of, job felt so huge. I was sort of blown over by it, but I put the time in and got it done, and that was absolutely a massive learning experience. And Ken, being the really detailed bloke he is, he's a really fantastic director. really set me straight on a lot of things. And I have a lot to be thankful to Ken for as well. He's a brilliant bloke.
Did you research Remembrance of the Daleks for that, or were they more interested in the 70s themes, so you didn't have to worry so much?
There wasn't really any. I think, if I recall, the stories weren't based around anything to do with Remembrance. If I recall, I don't really recall.
Apart from the characters, that's all.
Oh, the characters, yeah. But no, it was most of the research I had to do was, things like what do telephones sound like in the 70s and sirens, and I had to look at some old telly and listen to what engines would have sounded like in that era of telly, because I think the whole sort of vibe they were going for was this sort of ITV format, which was cool. But for me, most of it went right over my head, and I had to really delve deep into the figuring out what stuff's supposed to sound like. But
so how do you find that? How do you find what a telephone sounded like in 1972?
Well, you just watch enough telly, and
right.
You'll eventually find one. Yeah, they had a particular sound, and you can't make that up really with a conventional telephone you'd see today. It has to sound right, and I keep car engines as well. In my mind, everyone was driving around in a Datsun, so I found a recording of a Datsun engine and just used that for all of my car sounds. Yeah, and then it was other stuff as well, like
we had a Datsun.
Yeah,
I had a Datsun too. I think we all had Datsuns at some point.
Exactly. Yeah, they were kind of the car to have, weren't they? So that was a big part of it, and then it was, what traffic, for soundscapes, you'd have to basically start from blank essentially, because we don't have any recordings of sort of wild tracks of cities from back then, and I don't really know what they would have sounded like. So I had to make that bit up, which was quite a task, with reverbs and car engines and horns. And horns, that's another thing. Car engine horns are just different from back then as well. So that all has to be right to put you in the right place. Because if you hear a modern car horn in a show from the 70s, it's just going to totally throw you off. So you're kind of, maybe I'm drawing a quite a big picture of the challenge that was. Really.
So you're making the sounds right from scratch?
No, I'm buying samples. So I'm buying samples of Sterling. I think the old, whatever the old sirens are called, and I'm buying samples of the old horns from cars that are still around. So I'm buying samples of those small bits, but when it actually comes to making the soundscapes, I'm making those using a whole plethora of stuff I bought essentially, and bedding it in. So in a sense, I think you could say I'm building it from scratch, but I'm doing what any sound designer does, which is take a bunch of recordings, buy a load of samples, and place them all together.
Do you find you're able to reuse yours? Because having done the countermeasures, which is 1970s, the Dollhouse with Torchwood you did later is also 70s but a different country. Were you able to steal from the two, or is LA much too different a sound than London in the 70s?
Yeah, looking back on Torchwood, but particularly that one, the Doll's House, I think that had a different sort of, more of a glamour style to it. So I think the actual details, like what things are supposed to sound like, maybe didn't matter quite so much. The thing about countermeasures is that it was kind of one of those jobs that had to be kind of sound almost real.
Gritty. It was the professionals, wasn't it? It's professional sound.
Yeah. But whereas I think Torchwood, Doll's House was a bit more of a kind of Charlie's Angels, lots of bright colours, stars floating across the screen. So I think it wasn't quite as important to kind of nail that than it was to do countermeasures, in my opinion.
So you've worked through various ranges, War Master, Torchwood, Fifth Doctor, which I really like that trilogy there, the Mark arc that we like to call it. I really enjoy that trilogy a lot. So it was good you came back on the
I don't know why
Resort.
John Dorney has to keep killing off all the male companions, though. Can I just keep saying? Why?
It's just what he does. It's what he does.
Yeah. Oh, it's a male companion. I'll kill him. John Dorney, what are you doing? Anyhow.
You worked on Russell T Davies' Dark Season as well. So how does that compare, doing sound for a novel reading? Because as you said earlier, you said that audio is becoming more and more popular. And I think more and more people, not just Big Finish, but, well, that's what Big Finish does, but even normal audiobooks are being more enhanced these days, and more effort's going into them than ever before. So how does that work in comparison to full audio?
Yeah, so the book readings, one of my favourite things to work on is narrated audiobooks, for the simple reason that when you're working with just a single narrator, there's no other stuff going on. You're just scoring what's scoring or sound designing what they're saying, and it's a really nice sort of oiled down picture you get. Working on things like the short trip range, stories like A Full Life, or what other short trips were done?
I listened to one just yesterday, completely randomly. Didn't even realise it was you until I looked it up. It was The Ingenious Gentleman Adric of Alzarius.
That's the one.
I thought that was very, very cool short trip. It was beautiful. And Matthew Waterhouse just blows me away with his performance.
I really rate Matthew Waterhouse. He's amazing. But where that sort of sits, and particularly with Dark Season, because you're working with just the one narrator, you've got to basically be almost a bit more literal. But that's nice because there's not loads of stuff being told to you already. So I feel like you have more of a hand in actually setting the scene, if you understand. Whereas if when you have a full cast audio drama, there's sound design, there's 5 or 6 actors. They're doing a lot of the work for you. But when it's just narration, it's really down to the composer and the sound designer to really flesh out what's going on. And the nice thing about narrating and the narrative is that it's, if you have a good reader, it really adds to it. If you just employ, one of the great things about working on Full Life and Ingenious Gentleman Adric Alzarius is Matthew Waterhouse is an amazing reader, and you have to work kind of with the actor a lot more, and it's a very kind of intimate experience as opposed to working on full cast. But yeah, Dark Season was fun. It was really great, and the reason it was fun is because it's from a time on telly in about the 90s, and the music for it is just totally wild. I had to basically go back and recreate that sound within what I've got, and I looked at what the original composer was doing. I found the synths he was using, and recreated what he was essentially putting forward. And it's a lot of kind of sequence synthesizers, alien sounding, kind of coming off the back of the Radiophonic Workshop stuff. Very kind of alien sounding synthesizer, with lots of high pass filtering. And yeah, so that was a lot of fun to come up with. And I had to do a retake on the theme. So the theme here on the set isn't the original, but it is the original in notes and everything, but it's subtly different, and it's in that style. And I was really proud of that theme. And obviously working on anything Russell and Scott are involved with is brilliant as well. Russell's prose really came back then as well, in my opinion. It was nice to kind of be in that same sort of kind of literary zone to what's going on in telly with Doctor Who.
That would have been thrilling for you too, because Russell's behind your Doctor, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Yes, he's behind a lot of things, honestly. We have a lot to thank him for, I think. It kind of, and then when we kind of ended up doing Hodiac not long afterwards, Mind of the Hodiac, which was obviously his first ever Doctor Who script. His pitch to BBC Studios at the time, that was much the same experience. It was just totally, awe-inspiring work, really, in my opinion.
Well, since you've brought Mind of the Hodiac up, it was actually that score that made me reach out to you in the first place a few months back. And it, like Philip said, he sometimes skips the music suites. Well, this one I made a point of sitting down and listening to the music suite because it was touching me throughout the story. It wasn't that I just started listening to it by accident and went, oh, this is good. No, I actually had a cup of coffee next to me. I closed my eyes, had no other distractions, just let it flow over me. It was, I think it is the score of at least this year, I can tell you that.
Wow.
It's a beautiful piece, and what's fascinating about this is it's not 80s, right? So the Lost Stories often try to go and recreate the 80s era. But this is slightly different in as much as, yes, it's Russell T Davies set in the 80s. So it's like almost like, it struck me as like a hybrid of the 80s with the Sixth Doctor and Mel, but also incorporating the orchestral sounds of Russell T Davies' Doctor Who. So bringing them together to make this piece. Was that something that you consciously decided to do or were asked to do?
Yeah, well, when I sat down with, when Scott essentially told me what the brief was, it was, 80s and Marigold.
Yes, that's what I got.
Yeah. It was, so there were things like themes happening, but not quite as in your face as stuff like, Lone Centurion, where the character has a theme and then the character, that score for me was important for it to feel very emotional. It felt, and to really kind of nail home what was actually happening, particularly, the thing that really stuck out to me about that drama was the character Nan, who had that wonderful chat with Amy early on in disc 1. She was just telling her a story about all of the different planets that she'd been to, but not really indicating that she was an alien at all. For me, those two scenes really showed the scope of what was going on and the kind of beauty of that creature, if you know what I mean, or its potential to be beautiful, if you understand. So those two scenes for me really kind of nailed home what the score's supposed to sound like, because I always try and think about the link between the spoken word, whether it's poetry or verse or just a story, and music. And I try and always think about how I would say or how I would sing certain lines. So to me, hearing that sort of sparking dialogue really kind of sparked off the whole entire thing for me. Those two characters were sort of the heart of that family, weren't they? We're used to Russell T Davies' work now. We're used to seeing the middle class family in the centre of the story, but this was the first time it had ever happened. And I really wanted to kind of show the love that family had, despite the fact they were going through hard times. And I wanted to kind of convey it in a way that was, particularly when it eventually finishes, in a way that was really sort of beautiful and expressive. It was a real absolute honor to be able to be that expressive and really actually get that deep into the story and play around with stuff, particularly when Russell had written it. And the pressure was on, I'll tell you that. I poured everything into that score. If you see me in January, you see the very, black rings around my eyes and very tired, sort of mad. But yeah, absolutely. I think I spent about three weeks on the first episode just getting it right, and just making sure it was feeling good. And that project, obviously, with Emily Cook and Scott Hancock, we all just poured everything into it. We absolutely loved it. And it was just one of those stories where we really met on the same page. Scott and I work together a lot anyway, and we're always on the same page, but we really kind of understood the importance of that particular story and where it sat in relation to everything that's come after it. So we wanted to give it a good foundation. And of course, I'm super proud of that score.
So he should be.
Listening back to it, I just think, how did I even write that? Was that even me? But when you're in that kind of musical coma, that composer's coma, that kind of sort of half awake, dreamlike state, some of the stuff that comes out is more from your subconscious than it is from any conscious idea you've had. So, yeah, and when you're that deep in the kind of think tank, it's kind of hard to come out. You get to the other end of the job, and God, that's done. And then 2 weeks later, you listen to it and think, "Oh my gosh!" And I was so happy to see such a warm response about the music as well. I was from the general fans on the internet. It was really lovely to hear all of the lovely words spoken about the school and the story. Super proud of that one.
So, when you say the brief was 80s but Murray Gold, was there any more direction than that, or that was it, and you were given free rein?
It's given free rein. Yeah, that was it, and it was literally a case of, here you go. I tried. Scott and I have got. Scott and I have been working together for so long now that he knows what I'm going to do already. So he's got a kind of, we have a kind of mutual trust when it comes to this sort of thing. That we know that one person isn't going to mess it up, and if we do, we say it. But I'm just very grateful to be able to have that sort of level of trust when I'm working with someone. The amount of directors you work with, and they want to have micromanage stuff. There's none of that. It's just, here you go. Don't mess it up. I trust you to do a good job. And it was, as I said, the pressure was on. It was it could have been it was really a very important moment in particularly my development as a composer. I can think of a few times over the years where it's been crunch time and I've had to really put the effort in. And Hodiac was definitely one of those. And I really feel like the music that's coming out is better for it. Stuff I'm working on now is better because I worked on the Hodiac. And then it's really makes me happy to carry on that legacy.
Did Russell T Davies have a pass of it before it was approved? Because
he had a listen.
Okay, I know he likes to be very hands-on. Yeah. So did you get notes from Russell?
We got a couple of notes on the sound effects. I got no notes on the music, so I can only expect that he liked it. Imagine,
Notes from Russell T Davies. Well done.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, there was. I think there's one or two sound effects notes, and there's a scene that was flipped over, but otherwise there wasn't anything else, which is really amazing.
Now, I'm not sure. Have I heard that Murray Gold's coming back, or is that just a rumor that's going around? Didn't Segan Akinola?
It hasn't been announced. We don't know.
Okay,
we have no idea.
But Segan Akinola has stood down.
He's not doing anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He's not doing it.
I suspect we'll go back to more musical scores again because that's what Russell likes.
You never know, Rob. You might get the call.
Well, maybe. Could you imagine? Oh my gosh. Yeah. But
you thought that Hodiac was pressure.
Yeah, I know. I probably aged 10 years next to me if that came around. Oh my god. Yeah. But honestly, I'd be very surprised if it wasn't Murray, because I think Murray works on a lot of stuff with Russell. But no, if he wants me to come do it, I'll obviously more than happily come and work on it.
Just an episode. I'll just do one episode a season.
Yeah, sure. Whatever he wants. I'll do anything. I'll record just some hi-hat if he wants.
Well, the classic series mixed up the composers, so we can start that again.
Yeah,
we'll mix it up a bit, but yeah.
And who knows what's coming from this? Who knows what's coming from his sort of extended unit? Whatever he's going to do next. Yeah, we'll see. We're very excited to see. Obviously, I love Shooty as the Doctor as well. It's going to be amazing.
It will be.
Lots of exciting things. But no matter what happens on TV, I am a die-hard audio fan, and I'm still amazed after listening to this stuff for decades now that the quality is still there, and they've got new people like yourself who you've been there 7 years now working for the
Yeah.
for the company.
That's
Still
a good
still coming through with this great quality stuff and keeping me thoroughly entertained. And the thing when the new series originally came back, I was worried that, because I was so into Big Finish at the time, I didn't want Big Finish to end, and I thought that might have been it, but it carried on. So let's hope it keeps going.
Now, of course, you are doing a film score at the moment for Big Finish, aren't you? Because Big Finish has a movie coming out. You want to tell us a bit about that, and also how it's different?
Well, they have a short film coming out, which is obviously the Dorian Gray thing happening, because obviously it's I think it's 60th anniversary of Dorian Gray.
No, 10 years of Dorian Gray on Big Finish.
Big Finish, that was it. Yeah. So we've got a vinyl release, and we're having this short film. And what I can tell you about the short film, honestly, isn't very much. But I can tell you that the score is going to be quite very much like Dorian Gray on audio, but on telly. And I'm looking at players who have played in a few things television related recently to come and play on it. But we'll see. The vinyl as well is really great. Obviously, working on vinyl is a completely different ball game. But the what can I actually tell you about the short film that isn't going to get an angry email? Big Finish. Actually,
there has been some shots actually released on YouTube. I know I've watched some scenes being filmed, and Vlahos being interviewed. So you've seen some stuff there. But in terms of the music score, how is it different scoring for a film to an audio?
Yeah, so with audio, you have the kind of chance to really dig into the narrative a lot more, and you can be a lot more expressive and kind of score every small intricacy. Telly's like you have to basically kind of wash it almost with music, as opposed to with audio where you've got to essentially it's almost like a difference. It's like embroidery, scoring audio drama, but where I sort of consider scoring for film. For starters, you have to be quite visually inclined, so you have to see what's going on and use that information in your score. Whereas obviously with audio, you're only listening. But it does mean you can kind of do less, because you're looking at something, you're hearing something. The music then has to do more with less space, essentially. So you'll use telly scores these days are very sort of soundscape based. There's not much in the way of melody, not that much in the way of melody. If you go back a few years, obviously it's different. But I want to try and inject some more of that melodic aspect into this short film. Because I think, Dorian Gray's such a great, interesting character that he kind of deserves his own sort of melodic story, as well as his story of what's going on screen. And he's quite a vulnerable character as well. So there's a lot of space to really deliver something that's going to feel good, as well as just going to enhance what's happening on screen. I've got high hopes for that. That's going to be awesome. But I'm working on it sort of now in tandem with some Warmaster stuff, and it's sounding really good, and it's looking really good as well. I'm working with a new director to me, I think fairly new to Big Finish as well, a guy called David Amani. He's a lovely bloke, and we've been talking, and we've got a lot of the same influences. Like he really loves 80s rock music and things like Journey, and I really like classic rock music and classical music, and we sort of meet in the middle, and we're both huge Star Wars fans and John Williams fans. So he's very much of a sort that likes melody and theme, very similar to things like the Lone Centurion, or and so think of the score as going to be kind of like thematic, like the Lone Centurion was, but emotional in a way that Hodiac was, but dark. It's going to be quite dark, and there's some interesting characters in it as well, and some people you probably recognise. You recognise their face from headshots and shots of recording, but you won't recognise. Maybe some people you won't recognise until you hear them as well.
So you're working on a vinyl edition as well?
Yep. So we did a couple of short stories for vinyl, and that's I with vinyl, the stories are capped to the length that vinyl can be on, so they're sort of half an hour in length, sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, and it's a really nice narrated style that I really like scoring again. So there's a lot of kind of interlinked score with the words, essentially. So that's really great. I also use some. I got the old classical guitar out for that one as well. I particularly one of the stories. There's a lot of classical guitar over it because I studied a little bit of classical guitar and things like flamenco quite a few years ago. So I just grabbed that and put some of that in. And then some quite sort of fusion between sort of that classical guitar sound with sort of orchestra and the soundscape, and it makes quite a interesting score. And I'm really looking forward to hearing it on vinyl as well, because I have no idea what that's going to be like, because I've obviously having not worked on vinyl before. It's going to be a bit of an experience putting the needle down on that, hearing my music coming out.
So you haven't mixed it specifically for vinyl? It's just getting pressed?
So I have, yes. So there is a vinyl mix and a digital mix. I believe that, so there's a digital release of it coming out as well. So on the vinyl mix, I've basically made it sound like vinyl. And on the digital mix, on the vinyl mix, I've made it sound clean, so the vinyl makes it sound like vinyl, if that makes sense. And on the digital mix, I've put the vinyl sounds back in and EQ'd it slightly differently, so it sounds like an old wax record.
So the digital version is going to sound like it's vinyl.
Yeah, the digital version is going to sound like it's vinyl, even down to the vinyl scrapes at the end as the needle gets dropped off.
Oh, fantastic! Okay.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Yeah, I really can't wait for you to hear that. That's going to be excellent. I sort of put the idea to Scott at the beginning and said, do we need two different versions of it for physical and digital release? And we thought, well, yeah, that'd be great. And there's also lots of sort of background sound effects as well going on while the narration's happening. Hopefully they come across on vinyl. I'm really interested in hearing what that's going to sound like.
I ask you about the vinyl mix because a lot of bands, particularly modern prog bands, they'll release something on CD and they'll do a vinyl mix. And there's a couple of bands in particular who the vinyl experience is completely different to listening to it on a CD. It's amazing how different it is. And so that's why I was curious about this. May not be so noticeable being a short story because it's not so thick with sound, but certainly the vinyl experience is a different one for me at times.
Yeah, well, what I've heard from Scott already is apparently that the test pressing sound really good. So, he's had the thumbs up from him. So yeah, and I think they've been printed already, and I'm fairly certain there's some signing. Alex is signing some of them as well. But we'll see about that. It's been totally. I think there's 2 half-hour long stories to make and they're. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else I can say without. Yeah, there's no. Yeah, I think you're just gonna have to wait and see with that before I give anything.
Okay, surprises are good. I think you've been working with Hugh Skinner a lot though recently, haven't you? He's been in your ears an awful lot.
I love Hugh. He's absolutely amazing. Yeah, he's obviously was brilliant as Lancelot, but yeah, as Toby, he's also amazing. And I love the way he delivers his lines, and the tone of his voice really suits audio beautifully. It's lovely when you find an actor that can do both on screen and in the audio as well. He's really, really talented bloke. I'm always very happy when I see his name on the credits.
So what are you dreaming of for the future? What's your hopes and dreams for where do you want to go?
I really want to get into film scoring and telly scoring, on IPs that I'm familiar with. Or stuff that I have no idea about. All I'm looking for is a challenge, and every job is a challenge, really. So I'm really just looking to carry on that process of learning and process of experiencing, literary awesomeness. But no, I do have a real need or want to get into telly scoring, episodic telly scoring. That'll be a lot of fun. But we'll see about that. Well, there might be something on the horizon. Who knows? And hopefully this short film will open some doors for that.
Well, Big Finish has a film composer that does work for them, so you can always get into Joe's ear.
Yeah, Joe's lovely. I've emailed him a few times, and he's always very happy to talk. I've watched his podcast before coming on here, actually. It was really interesting to listen.
To finish off, could I just reiterate once again what a magnificent score Mind of the Hodiac was? If this is a sign of things to come, there are some great things to come. So thanks very much for joining us today, Rob.
Thanks, Dwayne. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, mate.
And prog on.
Yeah, man.
There was panic in the parlour and howling in the hall.
Doctor!
Oh!
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Mind of the Hodiac.
The other is out there, actively aware. She knows that I am searching and is afraid. She's out there, somewhere in the wide worlds.
Not again! Not again! Put it all down! Whatever you are! Why? Why do you keep doing this to us?
This institute is dedicated to research in the field of psychic science. The power granted to the human mind, taking us one step closer to the angels.
Your mind, his mind, his mind in your mind. Two minds, one mind.
Something's setting coordinates.
Keep down! What's happening? Why are you doing this?
It's gone. Whatever it was, it's gone.
But couldn't you feel it? The strength of it? A mind, a magnificent mind.
Is that it? It's over.
No, it is far from over.
The battle lines have been drawn. We march upon the earth.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
What a fascinating chat with Rob Harvey, Philip.
Yes, what an amazing man. I love what he's doing, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes in the future. So
thanks very much, Rob. It was a privilege chatting to you about these things, and yeah, keep making us cry with those beautiful scores. We love them. All right, Philip, that just leaves us to recommend something for this episode, and I think I might... No, I can't do that. It's your turn.
Oh, really?
Yes,
okay.
Really.
Let me go first.
Don't you know this by now?
I know. Tell me about it. I'm going to recommend an old Torchwood show, which I can't remember whether we talked about on air or afterwards with Rob. But anyhow, Rob and us talked about it. There's some stuff that we maybe cut out. Called The Dollhouse. So it's release number 14. It is just... So it's got none of the regulars in it at all. It's set in America, in LA, in the 70s. It's a pastiche of Charlie's Angels. And it even has the Charlie's Angels beginning, you know. Once in a city, there was 3 girls. So the first one, and so it does exactly the same as Charlie's Angels does. And the whole show is very tongue-in-cheek, but it's still got that whole Torchwood, aliens in the background, discovering what's going on. It's by Juno Dawson. So it's not one of the normal Torchwood writers, and I'm not sure. It's the only other thing she's written.
Juno wrote Redacted.
Really?
Okay.
There you go. So the only other thing she's written for Big Finish was one of the episodes in Aliens Among Us. So there, okay. Well, I didn't know she did Redacted, which I must admit I haven't listened to, but I've heard things about it. So yeah, if you're into Torchwood, it's one of the sidestepping ones. As I said, none of the regular cast, and so I suspect lots of people probably didn't buy it. But if you love the Charlie's Angels, the 70s, that sort of glam rock feel, this is a great episode to really get your teeth into and enjoy. I love the music in it. I love what Rob's done, because he's done the sound design and music for it. And I think you'll really enjoy it. So that's my suggestion. What about you, Dwayne, what are you going to recommend?
Yeah, Dwayne. Dwayne's a name.
Sorry, what did
You
I
forgot
say?
me for a moment. You just went, Dwayne.
No, I actually, you know what? So I've just looked up and just realised that actually, he's only actually done the sound design. Rob only did the sound design for this. Music was actually by Blair Mount and Steve Wright.
Okay.
So I should just correct myself there because, yeah. But anyhow, it's a great story, worth listening to.
Excellent. Right, I'm going to recommend a radio play from the BBC, which I stumbled across. It was originally broadcast on BBC 4, and it is a radio version of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And now earlier in the episode we were talking about music, and one of my biggest cinematic musical influences would have to be the soundtrack to Blade Runner by Vangelis. And Blade Runner is actually my favourite film. And so I stumbled across, I can't even work out how I stumbled across it, because it's not available to purchase anywhere, and I stumbled across it on YouTube. So it's a 2-hour audio adaptation, and it stars James Purefoy and Jessica Raine. So Jessica Raine, of course, played Verity Lambert in Adventure in Time and Space. So Jessica's playing the same character that Sean Young played in the movie. But this would be a much more... I haven't heard it all yet. I've only started listening to it. But it would be a much more literal to the book rendition. And the book is very different to the movie Blade Runner. So I'm going to recommend that and throw a link in for anyone who wants to check it out, just for a bit of a different version of that particular story.
I do love the book. I mean, it's really just a short story. It's a fascinating little short story. And
it's not a short story.
It's not a whole...
It's a novel.
It's not that long, though, is it?
Well, it's a novel.
Okay.
Couple of hundred pages.
Okay. I don't remember it being that long, but it was many, many years ago. I read it soon after Blade Runner came out, and then thought they're nothing the same, but I could see where some of the concepts came from.
Yeah. So that's my recommendation for this week. Thank you for yours, Philip. Thank you for being here as well. It's always a pleasure to be in your company.
Oh, it's ditto, Dwayne, ditto.
All right, we'll catch you all next time, guys.
See you, everyone.
This has been the Sirens of Audio, episode 124. Get with the program, with our guest Rob Harvey and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Original theme music composed by Joe Kramer. Background music throughout the episode by Rob Harvey. Our website is sirensofaudio.com, and you can email us at sirensofaudio@gmail.com or contact us via any one of our socials. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll hear you next time.